Hello, and welcome back to Dev Game Club, a weekly podcast in which two veteran game developers look at games from the past to discuss their relevance and impact today. I'm Brett Duville, and I'm joined as always by my co-host, a man who should not spurn the hive mind's offerings, who deserves to witness that, at least.
No, I don't. Tim Longo.
Did you get at least that far? I'm not sure. I feel like he must have been chapter 3. Oh no, maybe he's chapter 5. Yeah, so you're
not ringing a bell.
Far along. Yeah,
I mean,
there's like this doctor. There's this doctor dude who like sicks some. Oh no, it's definitely after that because he sends these invincible ones after you, whose limbs grow back.
Oh, great, invincible.
Yep. Well, you can slow them down, but you can't stop them. So you have to slow them down and get by them.
Right.
Anyway, and then you do in fact destroy one later. They're just impervious to your weapons. You will find a way to deal with them later. So anyway, we're of course talking about Dead Space from 2008, EA and Visceral, their Visceral studio, which was internal, right? That was just a studio name internally.
Yeah.
That was my recollection. Yeah, so you haven't gotten that much further. We should probably mention we were both traveling this past weekend to go to the 50th birthday of a friend who we've mentioned on the cast a few times, who we worked with on Starfighter, and so I got quite a bit further than Tim, who was doing additional traveling before that to see some family. So yeah, we don't have.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a mess. Yeah, it's gonna be. I think it'll be a short episode, and we don't have emails either, so we can't.
Yep.
We can't catch up on that. So yeah, it's been. I don't know. Holidays are approaching. Lots of crazy stuff happening in our lives, and so a little distracted, but we have. I mean, I think we have some topics we can hit for sure, and we're thinking this is a 4-episode. Game for sure, whether we finish fully or not. It's. I didn't get much further at all. I watched a video log. I think where they killed the captain, fairly recently, where they were talking about some of that nonsense. They're talking about the monolith or whatever it's called. Not the monolith, right. But the
obelisk.
Obelisk?
Monolith?
No, it's not. It's
the marker.
The beacon. Marker. There we go. It's the marker.
The marker.
Yeah, the marker and things like that. So I haven't experienced what your intro was from, but I'm starting to obviously see there's some sort of insanity, or I don't know. I don't know if it's insanity or there's definitely, we mentioned Scientology earlier, and and sort of like some of that ideology happening.
There's definitely. I mean, that's a definite trope of the the sort of first contact story is like, well, of course there's going to be some people who want to join with it and who believe that they're peaceful and their ends are noble, or that want to bend them to their purpose. I mean, both of those are on display to some degree in Alien, but in other stories as well. Like you can think of even like something like, I don't know, Independence Day or something, where there's a big scene where all these people are like looking up at the sky and then the aliens just blast them, and things like that. So it's, there's kind of those threads running here as well of, I mean, as we've said, this is definitely a game that borrows from all over the place, but just does it really, really well. And so it's doing it in those ways as well, for sure. This is, it's funny because you've played almost right up to the part where I texted you like, oh no, not this, because I had forgotten. I had put it out of my mind, and you're about to get there next.
Great. Well, before we go there though, I did want to mention that the fanaticism that kind of comes with that trope. I mean, having played Resident Evil 4 not long ago on the podcast, and I think about like Salazar, was that his name? Like, and he kind of was that religious figure, right? And they had the church, and the thing about Resident Evil 4, and I think I'm trying to think if in the other Resident Evils they hit it at all. I guess it's just I don't take it so seriously. I don't think they take themselves so seriously. Clearly, with Salazar and sort of that child. What was his name? Anyway.
Yeah, with the Napoleon hat.
Yeah, great. And I think Resident Evil pulls it off quite well because whether intentional or not, I don't take him seriously. I don't think they're taking themselves too seriously, so they can use those tropes. And I think the challenge that I remember with Dead Space as it's coming back to me as we're playing is like, oh yeah, they're way taking themselves too seriously on this. There's not, at least my interpretation, and so it doesn't really land. It's it is that sort of. I think there was something like that in Event Horizon 2. It's just there's always that. Maybe it's sort of related to the cosmic horror side of it and the eldritch horror side of it, of just that the things that are so unknowable cause you to go insane, right? Or something like that, right? And then there's this marker that's like the 2001 monolith, and it's so mysterious and an unknown that I can't comprehend or fathom, its existence. And so it kind of, so I don't remember if that's where it goes, but they have symbols written on the walls in this language I don't understand, you don't recognize, and there's whispers that are just randomly playing throughout the ship, so
I believe actually if you decode the symbols on the wall, it says, "I'm not being paid enough for this texture art."
Oh man. Sure.
Callback.
Yeah.
Callback.
Yeah. Well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, I mean, I appreciate it, and it is a trope of this, especially sci-fi horror, but for me so far, it's a little on the nose and a little too two-dimensional. But and it is, as we talked about, I think, on the first episode, there have been multiple games. There's been a couple of spin-off games. There's been novels. And so I'm sure they've fleshed out this whole like fanaticism ology, whatever it is. I forget that they actually, what's it? It's
Unitology.
Unitology, right? So it's Unitarian and Scientology combined, which is unfair to Unitarianism. But anyway, but I don't know. It's just a little. It's a little.
Be careful, man. Tom Cruise is going to send somebody to your house.
No. So, okay. You mean on the Scientology side? Oh, fine. Yes. Send them. Yes. I want to bring it.
Wow. Okay, you heard it here, folks.
Where is what's his name's wife? Dang it! I wish I could remember her name because my wife utters it probably once a week, yelling to the universe. Anyway, we don't want to go down the Scientology hole. But anyway, I'm about to get to a real fun part.
Yes,
that you said that I'm going to really love it.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us about one of the common trends of the early aughts?
Yes, or
in video games.
Yeah. So we've said before on this podcast that if you're going to have gameplay that's different from your main play, you should make it easy. And if you need it to be thrilling in some way, you should seek other ways to achieve that without making it just more difficult. Because they're
having a hard time keeping a straight face during this.
There is a turret section in this section of the game. And you know what? The first time I was like, oh, cool. And the 30th time I was like, not so cool.
Wait.
It's just...
30th? Are you exaggerating?
I am not.
What do you mean? 30 different turrets? Or I don't remember this.
No. There's one turret that I attempted through.
I thought you meant they made you do an objective 30 times. You meant you failed 30 times.
I failed at least 30 times. I'm just like, yikes. I mean, I have some things going against me. I have a off-market old controllers that are falling apart, right? So precision is not something that these controllers are really good at. But precision is pretty well required in this turret section. I'm very curious. Do you have mouse?
I'm using mouse and keyboard, yeah.
Yeah, so I bet with a mouse it actually won't be that bad because you can just kind of
This was a console first game, though, originally.
It was a console first game.
Why, unless there's heavy aim assist, why put a section in that doesn't work well on controllers?
There is not heavy aim assist. In fact, as far as I could tell, although the collision for the basically these meteors, you're in a meteor shower.
Yeah.
You're basically, hey kid, get down here.
Yeah.
Kind of section, right? And so you're just trying to blow these things out. They can overheat. So you have to be careful to like balance left and right. I mean,
fun.
it's just like you're managing so much, and there's a ton of these rocks flying at you of different speeds. So it's like, and the ones that are coming fast actually break up into 3 pieces. So it's like a throwback to Asteroids or something, where you're in first person.
The original space horror.
Person. Yeah, the original space horror. In space, nobody can see your pixels break apart. So it was, it was pretty brutal. I gotta say, I was not, I was not pleased doing it again and again. Yeah, and it's a whole like, when you fail, you're basically the hull's taking damage, and while this guy's Hammond, I think it is telling you, okay, I've almost got it. Every, like, 30 seconds left, and like every time I'm like, oh, I've already failed. Like, there's no way I can get through the last 30 seconds of this, because it's also random. So
you can't
like learn the pattern of where they're going to come from, because they're going to be different every time, and they're going to be kind of similar density, like in terms of how many are being shot at at what rate they're coming at you, but what type and where from. Those are going to be different. So you can't learn that either and just get better at the first half and then just kind of push your way through the second half or whatever. So it was.
This is starting to come back to me actually now. I do think I remember playing it, and I also, as you're speaking, starting to remember a bit of it becoming a bit of an infamous section of the game too, where people, the wall mission, as we say,
yes,
as everyone says, and
I went and looked it up. I was like, am I just doing something wrong here? Is there some obvious thing I'm missing? And the forums were like, oh yeah, we all fail this a million times, and then and then finally get through it. Just focus on the XYZ. It's like, just focus on shooting the things is basically the advice. Just make sure you shoot the things. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the tip. Make sure you get the small ones, but don't let the big ones through. And it's like, okay.
So,
It was miserable. That was not good, which is too bad, because it came after a section I really did like, which was like getting to the gun. It was very cool and tense, because you have to go through like a Death Star style trench, but you're not flying, obviously, but you're in this trench and there are these barriers, and you have to like hide behind the barriers as the meteors are coming. So
you're on the hull.
You're on the outside, right? And you're trying to get to the gun, and there's these basically shields for you for the meteors, and you have to go from one to the other. But of course, you're also in, you have no air, and so you get the air problem as well at the same time. So feels very tense. That's the actual good moment in the section of like, oh, I had to get out there. And then running back is pretty cool too, because you get some more of that sort of quiet fighting, which is I also like. I like it whenever you're fighting something, you just see them moving at you, and the silence accentuates the strangeness of the vacuum. So so I like that too. But the time I spent with the turret was not time I enjoyed.
Well, I was going to say I haven't played the trench section, but I was going to say something similar, in that the section before that, where you're introduced to the big hulking creature in that kind of like open, what is that area? It's like it's not the bridge, it's like some sort of
is it a cargo area? I can't remember if it's...
No, it's got an elevator.
It's the bridge.
It seems like a civilian area or something. It seems like a concourse,
it's like
or something.
10 forward or something.
Yeah, but anyway, and then you have to go through different hubs and spokes to open that elevator, and he keeps saying we're in an asteroid field, and so we need to turn on the turrets or something. And so the build up so far for me is cool, because you get a sense, again, like you've been doing throughout the game, of like getting all these systems online. And then if the trench section's even better, like the progression to get there sounds so awesome, but then to have the payoff be so rough is too bad.
I mean, if I had done it the first time, I would have thought it was amazing. And that's the thing, is that, I'm sure, that a number of things are going on there. Like the people who were building the game or testing the game got so good at that section that they were probably like, it's too easy now, or whatever. When it's like, but you've played 50 hours of it. You're quite good at this game now. You just shoot in the middle and kind of move the gun around a little bit. yeah, okay, maybe that works for you. Not so much me with my controls that are a mess. My controller falling apart. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely see how it happens, and it's something that we struggle with as developers. I mean, you want to put in things that are different just for punctuation and, to fight player fatigue and kind of give them a moment of, literally just something different, and unfortunately, it's very easy to make those too hard.
Yeah.
You got to remember that people came in to play your, third person horror game and not your first person asteroids game, even though it's technically, I guess, not first person, it's still third person, but it feels first person in the moment because you're very focused on the scope in front of you and not on Isaac in any way. I mean, he's obscured by his chair mostly, so that he's in. So I get it. It's also clearly a nod to Star Wars because it very much looks like the Star Wars chair to me to some degree. And the whole setup, it kind of looks that way, but yeah. Anyway.
Well, we had, I mean, there's this era, and I would even say the late '90s were doing the same thing. To your point on sort of set pieces and how you can understand how this section came to be, like there was this. I guess it's kind of still around, but and I'm definitely on the flying this because I haven't thought of this. Wasn't in my notes, but I think there's something here, and that there was an era where production values were getting to a point where set pieces became more popular and became more grandiose over time, and also because they're more expensive to make, there was this sort of pressure to make them, I guess I'll say, last longer, which usually the default solution to that was to make them more difficult, but also to mix up the palette of the different experiences you're doing within a given game, and pressure, whether internal or external pressure, of just this concept of, well, I've been hall crawling for a while, shooting these limbs off of these creatures. I need some palette cleanser, so we need to mix it up, and that's where sort of the turret levels came from. I mean, there's infamous turret levels all through games, right? We all know that, and some very much better than others, as just sort of like, I mean, I even remember back to Medal of Honor Allied Assault, right? Having, I think there was a tank level or something where that was one of the early ones where we were, and this is actually around the same. No, actually, that would have been the early aughts, but just this concept that there's this pressure to, because your game has such a, I guess I'll say, linear approach, and it's too bad because this game systemically and sort of like all the different the miniature sandbox that they have going on has a lot going for it that they didn't really need to mix it up this much, I don't think, to make the game more interesting. But as to stretch this concept out a little bit of a mini theory that I have here out a little bit further, and it's definitely top of mind because I'm close to finishing Dark Souls. If you take the Soulsian approach of that, obviously, because you're replaying sections all the time, right? Because things are reset, but it doesn't matter, and it's still hard. And I think the my macro point here is that I'm just happy that games have gotten to the point where the richness of the gameplay itself can carry you through a game without needing to sort of like feel that pressure of having to change it up on players all the time. Where you don't have faith in, or not faith, but that we've just found ways to make that those gameplay loops richer and carry you further just by tweaking things a little bit. And well, not a little bit always, but in every case. But in Dark Souls case, obviously the bosses are your palette cleansers, and you're still using the same mechanics and systems that you have when you're fighting the minions, but there's just some new twist to everything that you have to learn, but I'm still doing the same stuff. And I just am glad that I don't feel, that we've gotten to that point. I haven't played, let's see, what's the last big budget sort of hall crawly? Maybe Last of Us 2. But still there, I think even in Last of Us 2, there was a great attention to detail in the encounter design. So they had set pieces, but usually they were set pieces that really just were more about the over the top nature of how amazing it was. But the gameplay you were doing was still the same. And I just think we've gotten so much better at the encounter designs, so you can replay with these same guns, these same mechanics, these same systems, and still have fun. And maybe we don't feel as much the pressure to like totally switch it up on you and make it super hard to give you a hurdle to get over.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I mean, I was going to point out that a contemporary of theirs, one game in 2007, the other in 2009, the first two games in the Uncharted franchise, are games that really don't. I mean, they have basically two modes of play, I guess you'd say. They have the combat and they have the exploring, the puzzling and whatever, the Tomb Raider stuff that isn't. I mean, they have the Tomb Raider formula, basically. And in the sections where you're in big set pieces, and in 2009's Uncharted 2, that is probably the most memorable, one of the most memorable ones for me, is where you're in this hotel building, and it's coming down around you, literally, like the whole building is coming down. But you're still doing the things that you do, right? And then they'll use that and then have punctuating moments where you'll see a cutscene, right? And of course, that seems like something they didn't want to do here. Though they have sort of had one so far. There's one at the beginning, and then they've had one sort of recently. They have the little video things or whatever. But fundamentally, it's like you're always controlling Isaac and whatever. Even when
it's pretty
talking to him,
diegetic the whole time.
Yeah. So so that's maybe a little difference, is that you will cut to literally a bit of video, where you're sliding down a floor of a building that's collapsing, or a ship, a underwater vessel that a capsized vessel or whatever in later ones, right? You have these moments where there are big events that happen, and you essentially, that's a transition to doing again more of the same things that you were doing, and they use those as punctuation, and it's not that the combat in Uncharted is amazing. I like it, like I don't have a problem with it, but it's it's not it's not amazing. It's got that problem that any of those games sort of have, where it's like, okay, you just shot all those guys.
Yeah.
Plus you absorbed a bunch of bullets and then just kind of healed. So it's got those problems, but it, it's engaging enough for me, and there's enough variety with the puzzles and everything that it kind of works for me, and the story is very strong. Here, I don't know, it feels like they weren't confident in what they had, to do a thing like this and not have it just be a quick one and done. Like, that would have felt really generous. Like, oh yeah, we're going to let you do this thing and you're going to own it, which I would tend to want to, side with for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, I mean, I guess my point being fairly meandering to what you're saying, coming back to the summary of it, it really does boil down to what you just said for me. There is just, they didn't, I don't know, it's probably too strong to say that they didn't have confidence, but they have plenty going on in this game to make set pieces interesting and still have you use the mechanics that you know and the gameplay loops that you already know. There's a lot of cool stuff going on, and like this didn't need to be an additional difficulty curve moment. I mean, I haven't gotten to it yet, so we'll see how I feel this time, but I'm still impressed with a lot of what the game's doing, and they could have made something like an asteroid moment. Well, I would actually say that the centrifuge section was a good example of that, right?
That's a great set piece, doing the same things. The way they vary it is to, we both really like that moment, but having it have the 0G, incorporate everything, and then the vacuum, but not the 0G. Like they really put everything into that, and it really, really worked, and I did have to do it several times because of the one thing that didn't really signpost, or that I didn't fully understand. I thought it was the fact that the guy was talking to me that was slowing me down. In fact, until you talked about it, because Hammond or somebody gets you on the horn as you get the centrifuge going, and I went out and to the left, thinking, oh, I'll run away from the centrifuge. And just when he'd start talking to me, I'd slow down. I'm like, no, don't. I want to keep running. So until you had said, oh, yeah, there's the goop on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
I hadn't even tracked it.
They didn't teach you that part. Yeah, that's the only flaw in that section. But I think it is a perfect, so far at least, I think it's the perfect example of where all the elements of this game come together. And it's way more memorable to me. Well, I bet you it'll be more memorable to me in a good way than the asteroids will be.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, just the asteroids are it's just superfluous. We don't really need them. Other than the set piece, but to your original point, it just should have been easy and fun and just. And
well, it also goes against who the character is. Like in some ways, like this guy's just going to go out and now become a gunner, like because of necessity, I guess. Right? I mean, I get how you get there, but it's also
with a farm boy shooting,
shooting wombats, or whatever they're called, swamp. What are they called?
Womp rats. You messed me up with the womp rats. The womp. It's womp rats. I think it is womp rats. Oh man,
I think it is. Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm losing it.
They're not much bigger. They're not much bigger than 2 meters.
But this, I mean, the character is. They are trying to put this character in unlikely situations. This whole game, though. I mean, he is the unlikely hero, right? So, I mean, I get what you're saying on the turrets, but still, like, I'm not surprised because they're going to make him do all sorts of stuff, probably through all 3 games. I mean, not that we're going to play 2 or 3.
Talk to me again about a needle in the eye.
Yeah, exactly. Ugh. Yeah, it's just like where. Yeah, I wonder where they do because I didn't play 2 or 3, so I don't know where they went. But I'd be interested to see where they go with. Does he become a hero by the end of the series? Like is he is he a badass sort of Master Chief situation, or does he stay that sort of everyman kind of like unlikely hero? How they thread the needle on that, because I could see it escalating. But anyway, that's not. We'll see where I assume he stays in that realm for this game.
He does, or at least for the first 2. I don't believe I played the third one because I believe I was warned against. But I enjoyed 2 as well. It definitely goes a little further out there, and you do, I think, return to the same location as the first game. I don't remember if it's the ship or not, but like that planet and all that stuff, and this is a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
Interesting.
Anyway. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, but I was going to. What you going to change topic?
I was going to change topics.
Well, I was going to kind of use a bit of a segue from that concourse room because they introduce us to the big hulking creature. And I kind of have a 2 birds with 1 stone topic here, in that I think last episode, and I'm sure I'm misremembering this because it's been a couple weeks, and my memory's terrible. The last episode, I kind of alluded to a point I wanted to make as far as the enemy design goes. And the big hulking guy they introduced, I'm not sure I fully know what you're supposed to do there. Oh, I actually fought him twice. There was that one room with like the gravity. Oh
yes, the gravity things above. Yeah.
Where it would kill you if you
throw things up the top. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you fight him in there too, in close quarters. But separate. So I've upgraded the pulse rifle. That's my focus weapon, just to see what happens. And it's kind of unlike all the other weapons, I think, because it's not really like cutting based. It sort of has a tri laser thing happening, but I don't think it's really exactly the same. And my suspicion is that they introduced the pulse rifle for the sort of hardcore shooter players who really just want a rifle, because I think it's a military weapon. In fact, they even describe it that way. So as I'm upgrading it, I think it also has stopping power to it. And so when I met that first guy in that room, I just laid into him, and because of the stopping power, it just sort of like he couldn't come at me or something. And then I just basically laid into him. I mean, I obviously used a lot of ammo to do it, but I'm wondering, and I think I remember this from when it came out, that I think the pulse rifle might be a bit of an exploity weapon for this game because it kind of it breaks the, not to use an overused word, the paradigm of what they're trying to do a little bit. So I'm worried that I'm focusing so much on it because I think the game's going to play differently for me than I want it to. Because I really like the limb cutting off, and I can still cut limbs off with the pulse rifle, but because of the stopping power and stuff, it's weird. It's like it doesn't cut the limbs off as effectively, but it still slows them down, I think, or something. So It's just turning into a weird game for me now based on that. So yeah, that's my pulse rifle small tangent. So I mean, we'll see. I'm focusing all on damage right now because I want each shot to count, and so we'll see if my theory proves true once I fully upgrade it. If it's sort of, I think it's just going to become a weird. So my sort of like meta point to all of this is that it's another sort of like they're feeling out where they're going with this game, and a little bit of they didn't maybe know exactly what they had, and there is no need for this weapon to be in the game, but I could feel the tension if I were them of like, we're making a science fiction, space horror game. We probably need a rifle of some kind, that's what expectations will have.
Yeah, you want what the Space Marines have in Aliens.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. And it just isn't, I fear it's not going to be as fun of a game because of, with it. So.
Okay. So what you're supposed to do with those enemies, and I actually didn't do this with that first one, but in the close quarters, I definitely did. You're supposed to stasis them and get behind them and shoot them in the back.
Oh, stasis, of course. I didn't even think of that. Okay. So they're teaching you should use stasis on the enemy.
They actually tell you that, I think, like that they're only vulnerable from the back.
No, I heard that part.
Yeah. It is possible to take them down even with the cutter from the front. It just takes way more ammo.
Wow.
And that's a definite cost. I've definitely at times been like, oh man, I'm getting low on ammo.
Mm-hmm.
I did get an achievement when I took him out from the front. It's like the hard way or something like that. And then I was like, oh, and that reinforced to me like, oh, I was supposed to stasis him, wasn't I? And then I did the other ones that way, in the past the gravity hallways or whatever in that sort of area. I did that a lot because it was very close quarters, and the cutter does not have the stopping, pushing them back, sort of effect. So I definitely was glad that they had kind of reinforced that for me, even to the point of saying, hey, you did this the hard way with their achievement, which is a good achievement design, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you get it that first time, it's like, oh, that's not what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful. I guess I'd heard that and I was like, how am I going to get around them? And I also was like, didn't think about stasis in the moment. Even though I use it all the time with some of the smaller, faster ones, because it's easier to cut off their thin little limbs that way. So I have a tendency to do it, especially if I know where there's a stasis refill nearby. Because I'll just go back and refill it and just keep going forward. Like, okay, let me go back, refill, come back.
Yeah.
So that I have that available to me all the time. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. That's a good example. I mean, I definitely need to be using the powers more, I think, in combat. That sounds fun and it sounds cooler, especially in some of those cases. But I love that they designed. My heater just went on. Hopefully, it's not too bad.
No, it's not too bad.
I love that they designed an enemy that really reinforces that concept of like, yeah, you should use the stasis. So I'll have to try that. Yeah. And yeah, again, the pulse rifle being something that sort of like circumvents the need a little bit, and so it would divert you from that intended use. So then my additional point, and this is really getting into the weeds with some of the enemy design, that but I'm really hoping that this isn't giving them the benefit of the doubt, but one of the things I love about the limb cutting off design and the way that they visually designed the structure of the enemies is that, with the limb approach, one of the things about zombie games that you kind of love is the headshot concept.
Right. Yes.
The one-shot kills, or if you're, precise, etc. But what they have done with these, because of the arm construction on most of them, is you can still get, in many cases, you can still get a one-shot kill if you shoot toward the base of where two limbs are coming in, like with the babies, for instance. Two limbs are coming into the body, where they attach to the body. You can actually shoot at the base of both of them with one shot and hit them with certain weapons, and you basically get a one-shot kill that way. Or in some cases, it's just heavy damage. But it's sort of like the reason I'm geeking out about this is sort of the shape design of that, whether intentional or not. The limbs shoot out in the baby's case, and you see them, and like, okay, there's my target, and you can shoot the limbs, and they're very obvious, right? But if you spend a little time and shoot toward the base of them, where two of them are coming together, and cut two off with one shot, you're rewarded similar to a headshot. And I just nerd out on that kind of stuff, where you have to assume that it's somewhat intentional, because obviously, as two of them shoot out in at different angles, it's harder to hit two, right? So it sort of is this nice analog sort of like difficulty of trying to get the sweet spot of where both of them are within your crosshairs. Your sort of like flat crosshairs, or whatever, horizontal crosshairs, right, or vertical crosshairs. So I just thought, it's like a small thing, a nuanced little thing in a way that I think is very clever, to still accommodate that mentality of the headshot that you get in other zombie games like Resident Evil. So anyway, that was my little nerd point on shape design that I think is fascinating with this game.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the other thing that I think is really nice is, although you can just shoot the body, and it takes more work that way, they are also rewarding the precision shots generally, right? The default is, sure, the headshot, but you have to do two of them. Except in that, those cases where there is a spot where you can get two at once. And so, especially early on, I was using the stasis to be like, okay, freeze them. Okay, now I can carve them away. Bing, bing, and I can actually learn, where to shoot things. Reminds me a little bit of Killer 7, where there's sort of a vision mode, as I recall, and you have to sort of identify where the weak spot is on the enemies. A very strange game, but it sort of has the same sort of feel of like, I'm going to identify where I need to shoot, and then I'm going to precisely shoot in that spot in order to get past things quickly. And you tend to learn those patterns, and it's kind of happening the same way in this game. Killer 7 is a game I would love to play sometime for the podcast, but it is far too obscure, I think, to say that it was relevant even then, never mind today. Yeah, it was anyway.
Was that a Suda 51?
Yeah, it
game?
was. It was one of the Capcom 5 or 6 or whatever it was. Yeah.
I mean, we probably should play something
like that dancing one, P whatever. P09, I think it was the. I have that too, but I've never played it. I think that was maybe Grasshopper. Well, no, that
Grasshopper is Suda's company.
Is Suda's, yeah, so it's not Grasshopper. I can't remember who did that one, but yeah,
might have been.
And beautiful Joe,
Platinum,
and
pre-platinum, which was Clover.
It was Platinum. Yeah, it's Platinum. I was thinking of. Yeah, it's probably Clover.
Yeah, they might have been Clover at that point.
Yeah,
probably, But anyway, that's the weird historical progression of those studios. I mean, you joke about Killer 7, but we need someday to play something by him, by Suda 51. Like it's like he's unique enough of a developer, he and his team, that whether that's the one or not, I don't know. Probably No More Heroes would be more.
It would be easier to get No More Heroes for sure. Boy, is that talk about juvenile. Yeah. Anyway, so that's. Yeah, so I wanted to take that into the upgrades, because, of course, you've also been focusing your upgrades into that, and I've been focusing my upgrades into just basically my rig and my cutter.
Yeah.
it's funny actually to see the cutter's value go up every time I upgrade it, because you could sell your main weapons if you want.
Right.
And it's just slowly climbing in value. I'm like, and if I ever sell it, I'm doomed, because then I'll have to buy a new one and have it be nothing. Or I have to pay twice as much for it or something.
You think you lose the upgrades if you sell it, if you buy it back?
Well, I don't know if you get the same one back. Like, what are you buying? What you buying? So I'm not really sure, what the story is there, but yeah, I would have to. I mean, I may experiment at some point, just like sell it and buy it just to see what happens, and then just cycle a machine. But yeah, it's I'm very curious about that. But anyway, point is, I think that's another way to sort of quote unquote break the game. Although it does make me worry for myself of like, okay, yeah, so I've basically maxed out this gun, the cutter, and there are fights where I need, kind of everything. And is there just not going to be any more room to get to power this thing up? And so I'm just going to be in trouble later. Like, is there a point at which, okay, now it's all player skill because I can no longer do benefit myself through.
You can't Dark Souls your way through this one.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, when you say there's sections where you need everything, what do you mean by that? You mean like
just there was a boss fight. There was a boss fight where I needed kinesis, and I needed I used up almost all of my ammo, and I was basically fully powered. I think I still have a capacity upgrade or something like that, but I had basically everything for the cutter, and I have maxed out the suit. Like, the rig is not, other than adding more air, the suit's not going to get any better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just like, oh, so it's just going to be me at this point? And the worry I have is, okay, so either it doesn't require more of me and it feels kind of flat as a result going into the second half of the game, or it requires a lot more of me and I'm simply not going to get there this time around. Those are the concerns I have. Because I've just been selling everything that isn't cutter related. Yeah,
same. So. That's a good point. I mean, you've happened into the sort of the point of how challenging it is to create those sorts of difficulty curves, right? With a progression system, even a light progression system like this is like, there's math in there, but there's also, if you haven't accounted for every possible progression path in your balancing and tuning, or you have some dynamic difficulty happening, it could really make the last portion of the game, or the hockey stick, as they say, not feel very good, or be a wall as well. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Hopefully we get that far. But you can also upgrade the stasis and the powers too. You could put some. Correct. That might help to have that stuff be longer. Or
I've already started putting something into the stasis, I believe. So to start having a little bit more there. I don't remember how much the suit upgrades. Whether I think I'm at level 5. Feels like the top for me, but I don't really remember. Because it feels like there's a lot of game left, or a lot of chapters left anyway, and I'm like, well, there must be more suit versions if I'm, already upgraded to 5. But I don't know. I really don't know, and I don't remember.
You're on suit level 5, or suit number 5?
I think so. Maybe 4, but I thought it was.
Oh, you could be. Yeah. No, I think I just found 3 maybe right before I finished.
Okay. Yeah, I'm definitely.
So or.
Yeah.
No, it was 3. I think it was 3. Yeah, so that makes sense. I guess you could be at 5 at that point. I love the. This might be a segue too, but I love the art design for the suit as it becomes more badass. Just like how they add more metal strips and like armor, but it's not really like what it's just such an interesting suit design to me. We've talked about it in the first episode of like, it's, what we guess some of the influences are, because it's got that sort of like, a bit of that undersea feel, but it's also got some of that like mechanic feel, and then there's welding mask in there, well, welders and work, just, but it's also like medieval, like you said. I think it's just very fascinating. And then when you go into that chamber and then come out with a new one, and it's got twice as many metal strips on it, it's just so fascinating. And it looks skeletal. That was the other point. And the reason this is a segue,
it looks like vertebrae.
The reason this was a segue is I started noticing, maybe it's my imagination, but I don't think so. I think it's obviously all intentional, especially in the more industrial sections of the ship, like the more like, the innards of the ship. The ship itself is also like the geometry and the detail they put into it feels very skeletal. And it feels like you're inside this, to me at least, it feels like you're inside this beast. It's a metal beast and it's sharp. Like they do such a great job at like angles because there's things are sharp and they look like, I would hate to be in that place myself, because you're like, you could just brush your arm against any surface and you'll cut yourself. It just looks like the place where you need a suit like his. It looks hostile and just like humans are not meant to be there. I mean, obviously humans built it, so I don't know why they built it so to be so dangerous. Budget cuts, exactly. Yeah, it's like, safety. How many days since the last accident on that ship? It's like 0. It's I just love that when I'm walking through the ship as him and I'm looking around the hallway, or especially like when you're getting like I think it's the engines you turn on. There's some big space where you come in and there's just the infrastructure in the room, because there's a lot of just like railings and again, these skeletal sort of like structures that don't probably need to be there. They could just be a panel or something, but they made it look very much like that. So it feels, I don't know. It just feels like he's perfectly placed inside the world that they have built, and there's a nice partnership going on there.
Yeah, there's a real Geiger influence as well, with the suit in particular. I mean, the fact that it looks like vertebrae, going up as vertebrae is, that feels very Geiger.
Like a rusted metal Geiger or something, because there's more right angles than Geiger, but I get what you mean is like it feels like an organism.
Right. Yeah. Structurally speaking, I meant more so than materials, for sure. And then, and it's not quite as organic as some of his stuff looks. And I see that influence too in the the space design or in the environmental art. Similar sorts of influences, and it does have that sort of like, we're definitely in the same space as Aliens or Event Horizon, but we went a different way.
Yeah.
And in particular, having spaces where you take little carts, across chasms and things like that, where you're like, wait a minute, like, isn't space a premium in a ship like that? Like, the bigger the internal spaces are, the more metal you needed to encase them. It feels like it in some cases it wasn't efficient. I'm sure there's some like, oh yeah, but the such and such vents out through here. You need a big space or whatever. I'm sure there's reasons, right? That are, or at least there are justifications. Let's say reasons might be strong, but I do really like that aspect as well. That makes it feel, truly like a strange and alien environment. And and sort of industrial. At the same time, those those sorts of things feel very creaky. I definitely don't feel safe. I mean, it's like the trams in Resident Evil 4, for that matter. It doesn't feel like a safe place to be. Everything feels like, OSHA's never seen this place.
Well, precarious too, right? Everything's precarious, and to your point on like the efficiency of the building of the ship, like, and who knows how intentional they were with these sorts of concepts and whether this was there. But there's a lot of thought that goes into these sorts of games, so I really do give them the benefit of the doubt. That it doesn't, like, not only do the spaces seem like inefficient, but also like unnecessary is not the right word, but it's sort of what I mean, in that like when you are walking down a hall, there is so much extra superstructure to everything and they do a
Yeah.
great job at layering as well. I wanted to point that out too, because this was an era in 3D, especially 3D games like this, where you had a density of hallways and a density of rooms, where we were starting to actually do layers upon layers of geometry. We could afford to, because before we could just do like the surface of the collision and that's it, and then you texture it, right? But
Where it
now,
literally was the same thing, like in
yeah,
the case of BSP games, right?
right, they were the same. And now we're getting to the place where the collision and the geometry are different and separated, and so you have the basic of, and obviously we've been there for a while, but here I think Dead Space is like getting to the place of perfecting this, where you have the collision for gameplay purposes, but then you have these layers of like, for no reason, you can see beyond this wall, and you can see sort of the innards of it, and or below the floor there's like, oh, there's stuff down there, I'm never going to go there, but it makes it feel larger than it really is. It's all the tricks, the smoke and mirrors of that. And I just think they do a great job here. But to your point of inefficiency, it's like there's so many unnecessary, like, pipes and bars and whatever. It's very Geiger in that way. And I think Alien, the first movie especially, was very much like that, where that ship was like, there's some really elegantly designed things in the Nostromo, but there's also like the maintenance areas where you're like, man, there's a lot of crap in this maintenance area. Why do they need all this stuff? There's like pipes upon hoses upon pipes, and I think they definitely took a page from that for this too.
God, it's like they designed this area for some alien beast to run around in.
Exactly. Yeah. Wait, we have the alien. Let's design the ship around the alien now.
That's right. Yeah.
And I guess my point, going back to my previous point, like, I feel like that was what they did for Isaac, right? Like his suit and the ship, like, go together well. It's just, in this case, you're the the protagonist instead of the alien. But I don't know. It's interesting. It's I love this stuff. I love when this much thought is going into the way that things look and mesh together well.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think that's often a strength of survival horror games, that, in many cases they have to feel like reasonable spaces so that they can feel not every day, obviously, because we're not in an everyday space on this ship, but at least like human habitable, right? And it's funny, I find myself noting, because I think as you're going forward from where you are, you're going to see some repetition of spaces. And as a developer, I go, okay, well, that's good reuse. Like literally the same environment, like you come into a room and it looks exactly the same as the room on the prior floor, normally where the shop is, and then it's like 3 or 4 ways you can go out of that room or whatever. So like you see that room reused, dressed a little bit differently, but the same room. And then I go, yeah, but of course, like, you're building a ship, every floor is not going to look, we don't even build neighborhoods where every building looks different, never mind like what you would do with a ship that you've got to stamp out enough space for however many people to live and work, that's also going to get propelled through space. So it's like, okay, sure, and like my mind just goes, yeah, that makes total sense, even though it, at times I'm looking at it going, wasn't I already here?
Yeah.
It also means you have to learn fewer spaces. So there's like a lot of benefits to that. Like you go into a room, you're like, oh, I know which way to go, because I've been in spaces like this several times. And whenever I come in here, I go to the shop, which is on my right. And then we're going to go through this round door over that's next to it. And then to the next one around. And like, you just kind of like pick up patterns as well of design that are just sort of taking some of the mental burden off of you of understanding and navigating the spaces. So it all kind of works together really, really well and has production benefits, as well as sort of, design and feeling benefits of feeling like you're in that survival horror environment, even though you're not terrestrial, for example. So, so it all works pretty well. I wanted to throw one last thing to you, which you brought up in pre-show, which was the camera framing through level design.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you were going with that, so I'm really curious to hear.
Well, it's the couple that I've noted. There was the one, I think it was the engine, turning the engine on section. There was definitely the baby room. I guess the simple thing that I noticed that I'll call out and maybe we can keep an eye out for as we're continuing is whenever a door opens that isn't just into a regular hallway, but door, or you come around a corner in a hallway, like a 90-degree turn, or most importantly, when a door opens into a, I guess I'll say important space, I believe, most of the time have done a great job at thinking through what you see when you open that door. And it's maybe an obvious point, but it's often, I think, overlooked, and it isn't always easy to do to maintain a good like presentation and framing of what you are going to see when you come through the door, but also maintain, like you were just saying, that sort of sense of realism and that sense of balance in the ship where it's like things aren't just like wackily put together, where it's like, oh, it makes no sense. Why would this be facing this direction slightly off to an angle just to accommodate that nice view? So I feel like I don't feel like it's unrealistic where things are placed, but at the same time, I come through a door and this lit up, brightly lit up thing that is part of my objective for the next 10 minutes is right, there when I come through. It might be in the far distance in the case of I think it was maybe the tram or something, in the case of that engine room where you're turning on the big engines that are above you. I don't remember if that's exactly what it was, but, and the thing I love about it is that those are often for players subconscious. Like you just come through and you're not thinking, oh, there's the thing I need. You just go forward to the thing you need. It's not like registered, but there's a lot of level design and art direction put into those moments to make sure that they do lighting, right? Lighting's key for those, atmospherics, like all these things that draw your attention to this, to giving you good clues without having to, hit you over the head. They do have the breadcrumb thing, which I think in the UI they even call it the breadcrumb thing, don't they?
Oh, okay. I don't know.
The thing on the floor.
No, when you press R3.
Yeah. I think it's called breadcrumb. Turn that on or off or anything. But anyway, they have that if you get lost. But to be honest, I haven't used it very much because I feel like I generally there's definitely times when I get turned around and the repetition, you get confused. Sometimes you're like, oh wait, did I come this way or not? So I've used it in those cases. But coming into like my next quote unquote big objective, oftentimes I think they do a pretty good job framing, your where you need to go.
I agree. I will say, however, I often use the breadcrumb thing, not to know where I'm supposed to go, but so I can go the opposite direction. Because that's probably
right.
where the extra things.
That's where the extra
right?
things are. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that too.
I use it as a gamer. It's like, oh, I come into this room. Oh, I'm supposed to go through that door. Well, clearly, I need to check these other 3 doors first. Because that's
totally
because I'm a gamer. So that's a whole thing for sure. All right. Well, I think, that's our show. We will come back to other issues and discussions. We have a boss fight in your not too distant future. You also have to make, if you make your way through the turrets, which again, I totally feel like when I was playing it, I was like, he's going to play this on a mouse, that jerk. Because I found it extremely difficult with the beatable controller I have.
I mean, that being said, the mouse setting, like this is definitely not a game built for PC. Even this port is, I'm not throwing shade, but the port's not great for PC, especially on the control side. So there still could be a case where they do something wacky with that turret with the mouse, where it makes it harder than it should be. But we'll see.
Okay. Yeah, there's no lock on or anything either, at least that I found. So I don't know. Anyway, I will stop complaining about that now. We don't have an email this week. We've had some email. I want to thank Mystery Dip, who actually sent in. He found the little snip of Swahili movie acting. He didn't find the actual movie, but he found the original anecdote that I was referring to, and I read it. I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly it.
Amazing.
So yeah, that was pretty good. So well done on that, Mr. Dip. And we also heard we occasionally hear suggestions and things from folks. So even if it's not something you don't want to, not something you want us to read on the show, go ahead and shoot us a mail. I respond to almost all of them. Sorry, Blarg42, haven't gotten back your Final Fantasy 9 one yet. But, it's still there in the box. It might happen someday. In any case, you can send those to devgameclub@gmail.com. And, of course, we love to have your reviews on whatever platform you use. I am subscribed to get notifications about all the Apple infrastructure ones, really, regardless of where you are in the world. But if you use something else and would like to recommend us there, just shoot us a line. Let us know where to look for it. We'd like to read them on the show. You can find us on the web at devgameclub.com or on Twitter at devgameclub. You can also find my co-host at
Tim Longo Jr. with a JR at the end.
Yeah, you've been off twitching for a couple of weeks again. Here's hoping your Dark Souls skills will remain as you head into the final bits of that game. You've defeated
I've opened the
Grave
door.
Lord. Yeah, that's what I thought. And you also beat the Abyss.
Third try.
The Abyss was a challenge for me. It was definitely not 3 tries. That one was a little tough for me. Good for you. Well, you're pretty speedy. I think that helped in that one.
I've gotten some. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm just bouncing all over. And I've gotten some kudos for finishing the game with a bandit's knife as well, apparently, which I didn't even know would have been hard to do. So, yeah. Fun.
All right, well, you might be able to find him on twitch.tv/Tim Longo Jr. fighting the final boss in Dark Souls next week. I just want to say, of course, this being Thanksgiving week here in the United States, we're, as ever, thankful for those of you who listen to us. We appreciate it, and we love to hear from you. So it's great just to hear that you're enjoying or have something to contribute or thoughts or whatever. Keep them coming. We love it. This is a labor of love for us, and it definitely makes it worthwhile to hear from all of you. Our intro and outro music was written and performed by Kirk Hamilton, commissioned by friend of the cast Aaron Evers, and our logo and store are by Mark Garcia. Have fun watching your superior officer's projected UI this week, and good night.
Good night.